Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. This whole session's been recorded.
Okay, great. All right, folks, just in the spirit of time, we've allocated about 25, 30 minutes actually for the panel. We'll try to end the panel discussion at right around 4:20-ish. So give us about 10 minutes of just some final comments and any final Q&A. But certainly want to thank all the presenters so far. I know there's been some technical difficulties. We've had some folks kind of not being able to get back in this session, whatnot. So we'll just learn from that being our first session, our first summit, but just appreciate everyone's patience and understanding. So without further ado, I do want to introduce our panel this afternoon. So we have two of our team members from Tennessee, Jamie Nelson and Aaron Hughes will represent Tennessee and answer some questions. We have Dean Mario Hayek, the Dean of Business at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. So welcome, Mario. I saw you on the screen a few moments ago. It's good to have you on as a panelist. And then Kurt Lindberg, who is one of our consultants here at Lewis & Clark, who's helped us work with our faculty member, John, to get our early child care program off the ground and deposited to HLC for accreditation approval. And then we're really hoping and planning to launch that program, CBE, in the fall. So with that being said, I want to welcome all of you as panelists. And I have just a couple of questions really to prompt some discussion. So the first one, and we can kind of let you as panelists kind of jump in on this. But what are the sort of, I think the Tennessee group, I was in on their session last, and they, I think, put it well, just using the train analogy, that really the train, has kind of left the station, right? And CBE is really picking up momentum. It's moving in a direction that I think is going to continue to transform and challenge us as educators. So the question to the panelists are, what are the non-negotiable principles of a strong CBE system? So I don't know, anybody want to jump in and sort of take that one? You're muted.
Jamie, you're muted.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, yeah. My network glitched.
Yeah. What are the non-negotiable principles of a strong CBE system?
That's a good question. I think, for us, what we kind of found along the way is if you go around the country and you look at different CBE programs, they have nuances. They look different. A lot of people deliver things differently. I think, for us as a program, we had to craft out a full, clear vision of what we wanted CBE in Tennessee to look like. What does that graduate persona look like? What do we need to have them to know and to be able to do? How do we get our faculty there? So it's just mapping out and doing that. And I heard it mentioned twice here already. It's so important. Get these stakeholders to the table to help figure that out. Is like just including everyone, including your financial aid people, including, the registrar's office, all of those, and craft out your clear vision of what CBE means to you in your institution or in your system, and sticking to that and being consistent in that messaging. Because we're very careful about pointing people out into the world, and we do that, but we make sure that they understand. If you go and look around at different CBE programs in different places, they look a little differently. So I think having a clear vision is a big one for us.
Thank you, Jamie. Dean Hayek, anything from you or Kurt or Aaron?
Yeah. So for me, it's I think you have to have a clear understanding of the purpose of higher education, right? So I think there's been a huge shift. Before we used to say, I'm not teaching you just a tool, right? I'm teaching you how to think. And now it's, well, okay, so but what are we doing now? So now am I teaching you tools? Is that it? And I think that if we're not able to pass that hurdle and be very clear of what exactly our purpose is, we can't move forward, right?
Mm,
So so if my job is truly to prepare people for for the world, the employers out there and what they need, I have to be able to clearly break that down. Exactly what does that mean? And that takes a whole paradigm shift, I think, away from I'm teaching you how to think. So, and if we can't go past that, then there's nothing else to talk about. That's my 2 cents.
thank you. Thank you. Great perspective.
I often think about this critical thinking piece, though. So I've worked with water treatment, competency-based program, right? And I was blown away by what these folks have to know and do. I mean, they're part scientist, part chemist, part machinist, and critical thinking sometimes in higher ed has been critical. Critical thinking among these water treatment people is to be able to troubleshoot and figure out what the heck is going on and how do I fix it. So the non-negotiables that I see, competencies have to be well written. The assessments have to meet what industry is expecting. There needs to be alignment. So this intentional focus on aligning everything and getting right at what are the materials that these students need to build that mastery. And then the last piece, and I think this is where some of the clients I work with is just, they're going to be asked 3 years from now or 5 years from now, how are your competency-based programs doing? So we need to really say, well, let me tell you about that. Here are all the competencies across different timeframes. And some of these students, like a lot of students, are just blowing this out of the water. It's so great. But these other competencies, we've had to work on these because students aren't meeting the mastery requirements that industry's wanting. So we're adding more scaffolding, we're doing this, we're doing that. So I think all those are the non-negotiables that I see.
And I echo everything everyone has said, and I'll add one more thing is the adoption of a continuous improvement mindset. Because if we are alignment, one of my favorite terms, I love that you said that. If we're aligning to industry is going to be changing more rapidly than we've ever seen before. And so we need to be able to be nimble and agile in revisiting what it is that we are focusing on and the skills that students are learning to make sure that they're prepared for that change. So that's the only thing I would add.
Thank you, Erin. It's kind of a great transition, in terms of change and just the transformation we're seeing in education. So I think we alluded to it as well that, you travel around, and we've done some of that. And, even in the state of Illinois, we see different, schools sort of taking this on in a different way. I mean, what is best aligned with their culture, with the identity that they have around teaching and learning. So with all that being said, the next question, again, just opening it up to the panel, is what are the biggest hurdles that schools, colleges, sort of systems like Tennessee face when transitioning to a CBE model? And how have you as a panelist seen institutions sort of overcome those to really create something that's meaningful? And I can repeat that as well, if you'd like. So the biggest hurdles that all of you have experienced in transitioning to a CBE program. Anyone?
I can get started. I see 2 challenges, one on the academic side of the house and the other on the operation side of the house. From an academic perspective, I'm in a school of business, and again, the velocity of change, it keeps on accelerating. And if we're teaching all these tools, it means that the faculty also have to be able to keep up. And that, I think, is very intimidating. And I think it's a huge challenge in and of itself, right? So it's not just the principles anymore. Now we're teaching people how to do things. So the principles really never, well, not they never changed, but the change of principles were a lot slower than the tools and the application. From the operations side of the house, I think, well, gosh, if you say we're going to go, I think you and I had this conversation, we're going to go to a subscription-based model. It's like, no,
Yeah.
we can't do that. We don't have the systems, we don't have the technology. It's going to require investment. So there's so many different, financial aid. Well, how's financial aid going to, work? So there, it's you're rebuilding the Titanic. So it's just a lot of moving parts, and that's a challenge.
Thank you, Dean.
I would say for Tennessee, what we did with that was we said we want to fit within the systems that we have. How do we build CBE within the systems that we have? Because that whole idea of turning things upside down, we couldn't get schools to listen to us. They were like, no, we have curriculum change fatigue. These other things are all happening. We don't want to hear it. So we had to take a soft approach. We have all been faculty on this team. I think that's helpful. It helps with the buy-in. So we had to take a soft approach, develop those champions, work within the systems that we have, and do a lot of PR about we're not here to replace traditional education. This is just another option for students that traditional education doesn't fit in their life.
Yeah. And I don't know if Kurt or Aaron, if you have other perspective, but, kind of taking off of that and these systems that we have, I mean, another question is related to technology and the influence that technology and even technology bumping right into the, sort of ever sort of omnipresent sort of existence of AI. How does technology and AI really become a critical part of sort of nudging this CBE needle forward in your institutions, knowing that, I mean, we had this conversation yesterday, Ron and I, around just the continual dynamic nature of technology. And we all know that it's changing every day. We upgrade a system, we do X, and in a month or 2 months later or a year later, we've got to continue to add layers. So what are those in your opinions as panelists and individuals who have their perspective out there on CBE, what role, and again, it might seem like maybe an oversimplification because we know it's going to play a role, but maybe how is technology and AI going to influence the trajectory of models like CBE going forward for institutions? Thoughts on that?
I can take a stab at this. So when I use AI like ChatGPT, sometimes I get some really good information that I can build upon, but sometimes I can see like, wow, this isn't right. So I think from a competency-based standpoint, building those competencies for the students to really know and be able to do, I think that will be highly valued in the workforce. Being able to use AI as a starting point, but being able to know, well, this isn't quite right. And having that background. And then of course, all the programs that have the hands-on, the welding and the some of those psychomotor skills, they're going to be very well appreciated by the workforce.
Yeah, thank you. Any others, Mario? Any others on that one?
So I'm on the SIU AI, task force, if you will. And yesterday I was having a conversation with someone from the medical school, and they've created avatars, and so a student so as a med student, you can speak with this avatar, and it teaches you how to develop trust. So, you have to speak with your patient, and there's a whole narrative behind the patient, and you have to develop trust with this patient. So what I think is going to happen is that AI is going to enhance CBE because it allows it to be individualized. So whereas, you normally have one faculty for a group of students, now you have all these AIs that can assist customizing, programs and assignments and things for each individual, right? So in my opinion, AI is going to enhance the individualized experience. So just to test it out, so I went to my ChatGPT and I said, look, I want to negotiate with you the purchase of a car. So teach me how to negotiate. And then I want you to give me feedback and tell me how I did, and then grade me based on this rubric. And it did. So we negotiated back and forth. I probably lost, and you know, and so now it's just a one-on-one, and I just think that's phenomenal.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Any other perspective on that one?
Yeah, so I'm looking at it from a lens of the employer who has adopted AI tools and their workforce is allowed to use it as an assistant or within their daily work. And so how do their expectations of competency are now elevated? Because the things that you would have a person do independent without an assistant, or the expectations, now everybody has an assistant. So now that person who's earning the salary can be then elevated to a higher level of cognitive expectations. And so how do we shift higher ed and our training programs to recognize that elevation in expectations? So
Wow.
that's where my head went immediately. So
so if there's nothing else on that one, it's a great transition to this next question around accountability. And obviously with CBE, we're really moving away from this idea that you have to be in the seat for a very specific amount of time in order to, I don't know, it suggests that now you've learned what you've needed to learn. But when we think about it, maybe keeping this factor of AI in the mix of the question is, how do we build systems of accountability around a model like CBE, knowing that AI will inform the students' trajectory of building that competency? But how do we build systems of accountability in CBE with the factor of AI still supporting this idea of deep learning without seat time? Because it's like you said, Mara, well, crap, I'm in this class, in this business or economics class, and we have to deliver a presentation on negotiation. I'm running really late, so I'm just going to refer to AI. ChatGPT is quickly available now to all of us. And then I show up to class and, hey, I do a pretty good job, right? But that deep learning, right? And I know I've heard this concern from some of our faculty team here at LC is like, how do we assure? And I know in I don't know if it was mentioned in when you all did your presentation, Aaron, is this authentic assessment idea too, right? So again, perhaps a bit of a nebulous question, but how do we build those systems of accountability in our teaching and learning within CBE, knowing that seat time is not, I mean, essentially it's going to go away. And so, students are, we've all been students, but we know they can sort of, hey, I'm procrastinating. I'm getting, now I have all these tools that I can show Aaron that I've learned this stuff at the deepest level, but have I really? So curious as to all of your perspectives on that, especially knowing that I think we've all been on the faculty side, of the house. Is what do you think? How do we handle it?
I would say to that, I'm going to flip your idea there, and I think that CBE brings accountability to AI.
Okay.
Versus the other way around. What we work with our faculty on, and this comes out of AI, is focusing on the process in addition to the product. And so, when you're in competency-based, you're demonstrating your learning at different levels all the way through. And so we need to do that more in traditional education versus students being in seats. So what are the things that we can do where they're actually demonstrating? And so process really brings a lot of accountability in there.
Well, thank you.
I can also add to that. So this week I met with Cengage, and it was all around the AI functionality within Cengage. So they now have this thing called Gnome, where you can ask a student to record themselves giving an answer, and you can put the time limit on it. So, you have 30 seconds to answer this question. So they look at the camera, they answer the question, AI will read it, and they'll give them feedback, and they'll actually grade it. And the neat part is that, to create the questions, AI will help you look through a chapter or a section. You tell it which section. You tell it, give me the questions. So it creates the questions. It tells the student, okay, please answer this question number 1. You have 30 seconds. They have to look, they have to speak it, articulate it, explain it, and then they're given feedback and graded based on it. So right now, there are even AI tools that can help with that, so that you're making sure they're not just looking it up.
Right.
So that's just one way.
Oh, thank you, Mario. Any other thoughts on that?
One thing to add, Ken, is just the being transparent with your stakeholders. Here are the programs, here are the competencies, here are the aggregate performance on all these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well put.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'm going to, for the last 10 minutes or so here, I'd like to just open it up to the participants of the summit. And do you have questions that you would like to pose to our panelists from whatever perspective you want to pose them as? So we'll go ahead and open that up to all of you now, and I'll keep the chat open here. You can post them in the chat, or you're welcome to ask the question on screen. So go ahead and think of those questions, folks. We will wait patiently. And those of you who know me know I have other questions, but I'd like to leave you a chance to ask some as well. So.
I have a question.
Hello, Michael.
Michael, yes. I don't want to straw man CBE, but and I've worked in many other countries that are highly pragmatic in education. They don't have extra courses. They only focus on the work they're doing. So why did we feel the need eventually to put in a more well-rounded education for students instead of a very pragmatic, isolated series of treatments?
I mean, I can take a stab at it. I don't think that it's not necessarily a need. I mean, I enjoy being well-rounded. I enjoy my children being well-rounded. So I'm all for, I think that society's come to a point where it's not unaffordable. I increasingly see people, are working, they have families, they have kids, they don't have the time, they can't afford, paying more money for higher education. They're saying, you know what, I really need a job, or I need, to advance in my career, and I just can't afford to do this any other way. And so I think we're just trying to meet the needs of a segment of the market, not the entire market, but a segment of the market, for better or for worse. It doesn't mean that I think that the outcome's necessarily better, but it might be better for a particular individual.
Thank you.
And I would echo those words exactly, but I would also say, what makes you think CBE isn't rounded? We heard from faculty in the beginning, you're just trying to distill learning down to a set of skills. And that's not it at all. The knowledge is there in addition to the skill. And so it's not distilling it down to just training. We're not stripping education down to training. And so the opportunity is still there to be well-rounded, whatever we define well-rounded as. But it's not looking at CBE as though we're stripping away those opportunities to only become versed in just skills. The knowledge has to be there as well.
Yeah, I would agree with all those
And
comments.
in fact, we're doing a set of courses right now on durable skills. We've got 10 courses we're developing just for durable skills, one for the carceral learning space and one for our technical colleges. So that's just all of those, human enduring skills that are out there that a lot of people think that get lost in CBE, but it's really not.
Yeah, I would also argue that probably 10, 12 years ago, sort of started really dabbling in CBE. And to me, it was a very fundamental question of why. Like, why are we asking you as a student to be in a class for 16 weeks? Period. And so you think about and this idea of agility within a program, or what does it mean to really learn something, and trying to create those environments for our students that make more sense to them. Without, I think, to your point of distilling sort of the experience down to a very transactional thing. It's still a very transformative experience. And also, I think this is where our faculty come into play, right? Continuing to train and support a faculty that is continuing to become dynamic and being able to manage and help students move through a program that isn't the traditional linear program, but also saying that we're not abandoning sort of these traditional pathways, because there may need to, even to your point, Michael, there may be that individual that says, listen, I need that structure. I may not need the whole 16 weeks, but I'm okay sort of working with a faculty member, feeling that I've gotten it done and I understand it by week 12, but still being able to have access to that environment, as a resource. And so I think it's a matter of how do we create a model of education. And again, it goes back to there used to be that old saying, we can't be all things to all people. I think in some ways we sort of have to become organizations that are dynamic enough to sort of meet all people where they are at so that they can achieve the goal that they want to achieve. And that ultimately maintains a level of relevance to us as institutions. So it's a great question. And any other questions or perspective that we'd like to sort of challenge our panel here with?
It's actually well said there in the chat. Learning is fixed, time is variable.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
And that's the objective, isn't it?
Yep. Exactly. Thank you, Jamie, for that perspective. Any other questions from our crowd out there? Do you see competency-based education as a replacement for the traditional model or a complement? This is a question from Ryan Downey, who's one of our adjunct faculty and also one of our AI leads here on campus. Thank you, Ryan, for your question. So it's in the chat box there. Do you see CBE as a replacement to the traditional model of education or just a complement as panelists?
I might start out with, if we look at online education. So I was a part of Capella University before it was Capella, just starting out. And online was this new thing. And many of the traditional schools thought of it as poor quality. And now rolling forward, you can see the traditional schools advertising their online programs. So we've moved past that, but online education isn't replacing traditional education. So I kind of see the same thing where it's another form, it's an option for students.
Yeah. Thank you.
I agree with that. I think you segment the market, right? You segment it and you say, there's a market for this, for the traditional, there's a market for online, there's a market for CBE, and who's it best for,
Yeah, and I would also just remind everyone, they're not all the same. I too have been at many institutions, large institutions with CBE and online learning, and they're not all the same. So as far as the program implementation, the students' experience, but I think there is an opportunity though, especially with the implementation of AI, that the focus becomes more on outcomes, regardless of the actual implementation of a CBE program. Just having faculty and program designers looking explicitly at what is it that students are able to do at the end of this learning experience. I think that's going to be widely adopted, especially as, again, with the drive of AI and the skill set that is required, and with the rising costs of higher ed in general. So I see that as a huge opportunity for learners and for higher ed in general.
Thank you, Erin. So maybe before we wrap, and I just have a couple minutes perhaps of closing comments and observations. But before I get to that, I might ask each of our panelists to leave you as the first cohort of participants of this first, what we hope is an annual summit that continues to grow and become more dynamic in topics and in perspective that we bring to the table. But if you were to leave us as participants with one nugget of wisdom that you've learned along your journey as educators, doesn't necessarily have to be related to CBE, what would it be in relationship to transforming our institutions to be more relevant and meaningful for our customer? So what's a nugget of wisdom that you could leave with us as panelists? And we'll start maybe with you, Aaron, since you're still on my screen, like right there.
No pressure. I would say really know your audience and meet them where they are. I think that was a theme talking about our experience here in Tennessee, is really come understand who is the audience, the people that you're speaking to in this movement, and meeting them where they are. And I think that also applies as CBE faculty, administrators, etc. So that would be my nugget.
Thank you. Jamie, how about you as well from the Tennessee perspective?
I would think, just tagging on to what Aaron's saying, is know why you are doing what you are doing.
Yes.
Understand your why and why it needs to happen. And if you do that and you're enthusiastic about it, others will come along.
Yes. Thank you. Mario.
Yeah, I guess I'm a marketer at heart, right? So I believe in market. So if we say we're here to satisfy our customers the best we can, and let's just assume that our customers are both students and employers, wouldn't individualization be the best we can do? I mean, if it takes you to learn something 3 weeks, why am I going to sit you through a 16-week course? If it takes you 20, why am I going to sit you through a 16-week course? Why am I going to teach you things if you don't want to learn them and your employer doesn't want you to learn them? And if you want to do it on your own, that's fine. You can do that on your own. So it's like the ultimate customer experience, if you will, customer centric. So in my world, it's just be customer centric.
Okay, thank you. And Kurt, if you want to take it home for us, yeah.
There's kind of 3 things, but of course I'm starting with schools that are just getting started. So it's so important to have the president being like a evangelist and just realizing that it might not be perfect, but we want to get going with this. And then the second thing is finding a program, like you were saying, Mario, about can you market it? So you don't want to do all this work with CBE and not have something that will attract students. And then the third thing, I always try to get that first program and the faculty member that can be an internal evangelist among the faculty, because they're going to get some resistance with the old guard, and they have to kind of be protected, but well respected in the organization to move things forward. So those are the 3 little nuggets.
Thank you. And we have established champions. Absolutely, Aaron. Well, with that being said, I do want to thank our panelists for spending a little bit more time with us this afternoon and sharing your perspective and wisdom. And I want to take just a couple minutes here and wrap things up. First, I want to thank all of you as participants for being engaged in this session and being participants in this work. I think as our friends from Tennessee said, as you continue to explore the idea of CBE, how it can help you as an institution, you're going to find that most institutions, if not all institutions, have their own nuances and different ways of doing it. And I think, we as learners and as educators, should be excited about that, being able to find and understand how we can learn from one another to help move things forward. So a couple of final comments. There are two sort of perspectives that I have enjoyed that kind of frame my own work, but also what I like to share with my team in terms of how we continue to look at the future, how we continue to look toward the future, and ultimately embrace it. So there's a sort of an old economic sort of perspective that the future is now, it is just unevenly distributed. And I think as educators, you know, if we think about the opportunities in front of us and the ability that we have to redistribute and refocus access, it's quite remarkable and quite frankly an honor to be able to be in the positions we're in to influence that movement. So as you continue to challenge yourselves, as whether you're a faculty member on this session, whether you're an administrator, whether you're a staff member that's supporting financial aid or leading the way in advising, think of those ways in which you have the ability to redistribute and refocus the power that education can deliver for our students. The other piece is by one of my very favorite authors, Atul Gawande, and he says betterment is a perpetual labor. And I think, you know, as we continue to sort of lean on one another as educators, you know, the idea of this summit is really to bring together thought leaders around ideas like CBE to hopefully influence and nudge that needle forward to become better as institutions, to become better as colleagues, to become better as a system of education. And I mean a system being, you know, this sort of system of colleges across the country to continue to find ways to deliver meaningful and relevant education to our customers and to be able to create meaningful and relevant relationships with our partners in the community, whether that's on the workforce side, the K through 12 side, or whether it's just with the local Rotary Club. How can we better partner and become better in the work that we do? So with that being said, I want to thank all of you, truly thank all of you for your patience, for jumping on today and just hanging out with one another and learning a little bit about the work that we're all trying to do to make our states and our educational systems better. We hope to also offer this session next year. Pam and Kurt and Tim and I are even thinking about possibly offering this in person as part of a conference that's set in the fall here in Illinois. But we're thinking of you know, we're gonna send some things out to get your feedback, to get your ideas, and then perhaps this just becomes sort of an annual summit, you know, last week of April every year, where we bring together all of you with a great mix of speakers and perspective to keep challenging ourselves to grow and become better as educators, and of course, at the end of the day, serve our students at the highest level possible. So again, it's just extreme gratitude. Thank you all for doing the great work that you're doing. Keep pushing forward, and you know, keep leaning on one another when you need to. And I think that the future is as exciting as it can be, and it's as exciting as we make it. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon. I'm really doing a great job here of keeping on time. And if you know me, and my team is like, all right, Ken, you're almost over, right? But in all seriousness, thank you all so much. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you very soon. Thanks so much.